You think you know all the dangers of designing with shipping containers? I don't think I've seen too many people with this issue. I'm facing up to 30 days in jail, or so I was told by the magistrate multiple times in a hearing I had early April. Let's see if we can get into this. So, you can see here about 7 years ago, I came up with this crazy idea. I have 5 daughters. I figured I could build something that they would want to have their weddings in. I know, crazy. Also, I figured it would give me a chance to give them, instead of the bedrooms that they typically had as children, instead it would be more like a fancy motel room attached to my house. Once again, crazy idea. These crazy ideas get me in lots of trouble. Like, I don't know if you can see that swimming pool is probably going to cost me a bundle. And behind the swimming pool, all of my daughters played volleyball, so I have a volleyball court out there. And it did cost me a bundle because I've actually built it. Because not only do I have crazy ideas, I see crazy ideas through. I don't know why. Something's wrong with me. So you can see my original intent was to build out of a 747 wing. Well, I abandoned that when I listened to multiple engineers, architects, friends of mine who I've all had to hear this story again and again, that I wanted to build out of shipping containers, and I was doing research, and I even purchased shipping containers, to be quite honest with you. Now, what happens is we now have a situation where shipping containers are not allowed in York County. Now, I'm going to get into a couple points here. One of the things being, we're going to review the code for York County shipping containers, but we're going to realize that they haven't accommodated for what I'm looking at here, which is using a shipping container as its structure. And if you want to tell me how dumb I am, feel free to jump on and tell me how dumb I am. That's all anyone's ever said to me, but I still want to do it. Okay. Well, long story short, I've now been delayed in this process considerable amounts of time because of this argument about these shipping containers. Okay. So you can see that was a design from 7 years ago. It's now been changed some. It's still being modified. As a matter of fact, on a stream this week, I'm going to be finishing up the design just in the hopes that I can actually build this container house. Okay. And we're going to be teaching a little bit about how to do terrain and how to do some crazy things. Like, one of the things you're going to see, this is actually a construction pipe that I fill with water. I'm planning on filling with this one with water. I already have one filled with water down by the volleyball court. All right. I understand my ideas are not normal. Okay. So let's get to the code. So to get to the code, we would download the code. And I simply did a search for shipping containers. And what we're going to find is there's really only two pages, page 273 and page 571. Okay. And 273, it's sort of ironic because I'm going to show you some videos in a little bit that even the Planning Commissioning Board is a little bit confused by this, because at one point it says here a maximum number of three or a maximum of 3 shipping containers per lot are allowed, except as provided in paragraph D. And then you come back to paragraph D, and what does it say right here? The maximum of 1 container per lot. All right. These is a little bit confusing. Maybe we can get it explained. Maybe someone can clarify that for me, but that I don't understand. All right. Now, I'm not going to go into reading all of this, because you've got to understand that prior, this comes from 2024, but if we look up the actual when this code came out, the code entirely changed, and I changed from what was classified as an RC2 to an RSF 30. Now, there's going to be multiple times that people refer to that as exactly the same. It is far from exactly the same. And I think simple research into it by better people than me will quickly tell you that that code is not exactly the same. There was no mention of shipping containers prior to 2022. Okay, so that's the one page we have on shipping containers. Which and where the big bone of contention is, it says this subpart applies to all shipping containers which are allowed as conditional accessory use, but only in these districts. Okay. Now, the irony to this is when I was in that rather hostile hearing at the beginning of April, I recommended to the judge and to Mr. DuBose that we should really listen to what the planning commissioning was talking about on March 31st. I'm just giving you a little bit of foreshadowing. At the end of this, the climax of this, you're going to see there's a good reason we should have looked at the March 31st, and the May one is even more interesting. But we'll get to that. So this is the reason that I'm violating the code, because you cannot have it in RSF 30. You will hear Keith say that again and again and again and again. I'm sorry, Mr. DuBose say that again and again and again. All right, so the only other page on shipping containers is this one right here. And this is a very important one. And that is the definition of a shipping container. And what I'm interested in is a 6-sided steel unit. See, because my question then becomes, if I am cutting the back out of these containers in order to put windows or doors, okay, when I cut the back out of the container, does that classify it as no longer being a shipping container? Or can you give me an idea of how much modification I have to do to it before it becomes not a shipping container? So if we go back to that Revit, there was one other thing, and that was, let's see how I looked this up, is table 155.718. That's him. Which is temporary uses and structures. Okay. Now, what we find in temporary uses and structures is, you'll see this is to allow a person to have temporary structures. Okay. Now, you've probably seen them on some construction sites. I know when they built Catawba Ridge, they brought in half a dozen shipping containers, set them right there next to the parkway, and had no problem, because that's what the intended use is for it. So does it not jump to the next page? There should be a table, and that's the table. Okay, so if we go back to this one here, oh, that's too early. Temporary use table. That's what we're looking for, these temporary uses. Okay. And it says what happens is, if your temporary use is not listed in the table, then we apply unlisted temporary uses. Now, this is where I think the confusion is, because the zoning administrator seems to believe that she has some say-so over these. However, when we look at the table, what we're going to find is, here's what I'm looking for. It is a construction storage. No different than I've done on multiple sites. You got to understand, you've seen me in construction trailers. I've worked out of them for the last 6 years. Okay. On most of the big projects that we've worked on, I have visited the construction trailer, which is a shipping container. Okay. So what it says is the zoning compliance required? Yes, if the use is not located on the same site as the associated construction. Well, I pulled the permit for 1515. Okay. That's what allows me to have the shipping containers while that permit is active. So that's where we've got a problem. Because yes, now I don't have an active permit anymore. It was like, oops, I slipped and fell on a banana peel, but somehow I do not have an active permit anymore. However, when the citation was written, I did, and Mr. Dubose knows it because he says he knows when I had the last inspection done, and you have 6 months from the last inspection. See, that's part of the problem is when you do this weird kind of construction, you don't really fit into the typical inspections. In other words, because I didn't need a framing inspection, I had to do all of my framing, all of my roughing, all of my electrical, all my plumbing, and all my duct work. And yes, I did all of that work. Okay. Before I could call for another inspection. That's why it went beyond 6 months. It also went beyond 6 months because I had my last daughter. It was her senior year, and we were visiting schools. So it was a little bit of a hectic time. As you also hear and later on in this, I was dealing with some medical issues with a family member. Okay. So yes, indeed, the permit has expired. And yes, indeed, that then means that now, I guess what they're saying is I'm in violation of having those shipping containers on there. However, the only citation I ever received was I received while there was an active permit. That's why I've contested all along that I'm not guilty. Okay. Now, in this temporary structures, it was sort of funny because I think the way I got there was something. The idea was the container that has upset the neighbors. We're going to go into that in just a second, but the table that's upset the neighbors is really the one that I was just using as a temporary because I understood these codes went into effect. Okay, so I was trying to be cognizant, but there's a spot where we can have 180 days to. Oh, I'll tell you where it was. It was back on that shipping container. Let's see. Let's see right here. This subpart does not apply to temporary shipping containers placed on a lot for less than 180 days. And yeah, I was pretty stupid because here's the dumb idea. And you got to understand, you don't have these crazy ideas without having this happen to you. Well, let's see if I can find it. Yup, that's him right there. So you could see, we look back at that image. Now I'll pull it over here because this will sort of bring it up the best. Let's see. So this is the shipping container that caused all the problem. Ironically, in one of the planning commission meetings, I think they're actually even talking about me because I guess someone decided that I was thumbing my nose at them, at my neighbors, by putting the shipping container there. I assure you it wasn't. There was a reason that that shipping container was put there. Because what happened was I wanted that shipping container to receive the most light in a day. So I ran a shadow study. Okay. And I looked at the different places in my yards where I would not get as much sunlight. So the reason that it was put there. Now, why would you want sunlight? Well, because you can see all these big trees, and these trees are big, big. One of the swings is 100-foot piece of rope, and it wasn't even cut. It's 100-foot pendulum. Well, the brother to that tree I cut down and I harvested the wood right there on the back in the backyard. Well, everyone told me how crazy I was. I had these big logs laying in my backyard for 9 months. I hired a sawyer to come out, and we harvested that wood and milled that rough salt that wood down. Okay, it's going to come in play later. This is one of the construction materials, and ironically, at one point, like I said, that zoning administrator seems to think that because it said for unlisted and somehow this falls into unlisted, she had the ability to tell me I couldn't have the other containers. So let's see if we can even see what the other containers look like. Oh, so it was told to me that there wasn't enough, that this wasn't construction equipment. Well, in this container here, I actually had a narrative written that most of this container was a deconstructed house that was taken down uptown. It was a bunch of mahogany and other materials that I could use to do my renovations. Okay. And then the previous one to that was a bunch of tools that I bought out of someone, an older fellow passed away, a neighbor, and I was able to purchase all the contents of his garage, all of his equipment, all the saws, table saws, that kind of stuff. Well, somehow the zoning administrator thinks that they have the ability to say, no, 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 you could put all that into one container. Well, here's the problem, and I mentioned this in one of the hearings. The humidity in here was still too high. Okay, it was still too high. This took more than 180 days. I was hoping that this lumber would dry out in that amount of time, and it took more like a little over a year. But understand, I pulled that building permit, which then allows it to be a container for the construction materials according to that table. Okay, so that's where I'm at. Now, I mentioned, I don't want this to be too long. I want to try to keep this under 20 minutes. So I don't want to repeat a bunch. Let's see. This is the PDF, what I'm looking for. All right. So this is satellite imagery of this area. And what I've actually got is from 2019 to 2022. See, 2022, in I believe February is when they adopted this new code that now had a prescription for shipping containers. And you'll see in 2019, I already had the one shipping container. And in 2022, you'll see I had both shipping containers. Okay. Now, the reason we know that this code wasn't changed is we were keeping chickens in this area right here. And York County came out and said you couldn't have any chickens. And I said I was confused. I didn't see anything in the code that said anything about chickens. And he informed me that, yes, that's correct. If it doesn't say it, you can't have it. At which point, yeah, I was a smartass. I said, well, it doesn't say you can have cats, dogs, or children. Does that mean you can't have them? And maybe that was where this all started. I don't know. Okay. But the moral of the story is when the 22 code was adopted, you're now allowed to have 6 chickens. Whereas before 2022, which is why I'm showing you that I had both shipping containers of these 2 shipping containers prior to the code being added. Okay. Now, I thought there was also a couple other interesting things in this one. All right. Oh, this doesn't go back. 2019 is not old enough for us to see, but here you'll see this is the beginning of the 500, I don't know, maybe 1,000 truckloads of fill. And I don't know how clean, and I don't really care because I'll be honest, there used to be a trailer right here. Let's look at it. 2019. Let's go back a little bit earlier than that. How about 2016? Does that have the trailers on there? Sure, it does. Okay. So in 2016, you'll see there was a trailer right here that, I'll be honest, it had raw sewage coming right out of it, going down into the waterway. Okay. I knew that when I purchased the land. I was a little bit shocked that that would be allowed to get away with. But the point of my story is what ends up happening is these two trailers, and you can see, yeah, that's all garbage. Okay, that's all debris. I had the same problem in back then. You'll see that I had the exact same problem. Oh, you'd have to go a little bit older because I had cleaned it up, but this was all a debris field. This was all a debris field. These people didn't have a dump, okay, which is something else we may talk about in a minute. But at any rate, it was zoned residential conservation. You can see they added this neighborhood over here. And you can see what this one ends up going to if we go to 2025. You'll see that that pair of trailers, and believe me, they had billy goats, they had all kinds of animals, they even had horses, to be quite honest with you, on both of these properties at one time. You can see the difference. Okay, there's a considerable difference in that footprint. I wouldn't really consider it residential conservation. But you also see, yes, indeed, I did build that sand volleyball court in the back. And matter of fact, I gained so much from that. My daughter's playing. Okay, now I guess this would be another good time because you're going to hear this. Oh my gosh, you got all these unregistered cars. Well, I'll be honest with you, these are all my kids' cars. I do have one registered car that I tried to explain that I drive around this little tracker. But here's where I really have some frustration. All right. What is that? You see how far away that is? Let's look. That is one lot over. I have a handful of cars and a handful of cars. And in all honesty, it was assumed that they were all unregistered, and most of them have insurance and license because they're the second car in case my kids have any problems with their cars. But what is this? How are you going to let this happen? And you're giving me a hard time about cars. Like I said, if you continue to watch, you'll see where that gets into that bone of contention. Then the last thing that I have is I keep being told that this is the RSF. Where did the I guess you can't out zoom the scroll bar. Oh, it's over there. I see it now. All right. So this is all zoned RSF 30. And it doesn't matter what your lot size is. They don't make very many exceptions, except you'd see that back in 2016, when they decided to completely change our road and divide it in half by the parkway, guess what they were nice enough to do in 2019? Now, the reason I bring this up is if you can't have shipping containers, how can I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 big dumpsters? You put a temporary trash site on my land, on my road. You can see the proximity of this to my property. We're talking from here to here. That's okay for York County to do, and yet you're going to do this to me? Doesn't seem fair. It really just doesn't seem fair. So, what is weird about this whole situation is I was meeting with a magistrate and I was completely satisfied with him. We were getting somewhere. And we had a continuance. We had two continuances. You're going to end up seeing that. And after the second continuance, I was supposed to come back at the end of September, and we were supposed to show that we'd been working on the property and that we were headed towards the target. And that meeting never happened. I guess because of schedule, whatever reason. But the really odd thing happened in the spring of this year. I received notification that we were changing courts and we're now going to be in a new court. And I said, well, that's unusual, but I guess it happens. Well, unfortunately, when I went to that hearing, it didn't go real well. And I was feeling rather intimidated. And when I said that I wanted a trial by jury, that was when I was warned that I could face 30 days in jail. Now, all of that seems extremely suspicious, but the biggest problem I have with that meeting, and I haven't requested the transcript, I did get the transcript for the two prior ones, but in that meeting, I just remember being shocked for two reasons. One, when Mr. DeBow perjured himself and said that there was 3 continuances, I said, well, you can easily prove exactly how many continuances there are. All those records exist. If you perjure yourself about something that there's solid records of, what won't you perjure yourself on? So that was the number one. The number two thing, I tried to prevent all of this because if you watch these two planning commissioning meetings, according to the code that's about to be amended next month, I can have 2 shipping containers. What I still need a definition of, and this is where I got extremely frustrated because if we have, let's see, this code right here. Now, this is another very odd situation. And this is that we're talking about incorporated Fort Mill versus unincorporated York. Typically, incorporated is going to be much more stringent, but I know people will say you can never assume that. My problem is I can't find anything in the York County Code that has anything like in the Fort Mill Code. Because you see, in Fort Mill, they have a Chapter 155 zoning code, Section 155-1804.5, which is shipping container structures. And as I said, they still haven't addressed this in York County. Okay. So if I have to wait till next year, maybe the planning commission meeting, they can talk about it this next spring, and maybe we could be in a position where I can do this construction. But I think it seems really silly to threaten someone to move shipping containers off the land when they're about to be allowed on the land. To me, this is all leaving me feeling like there's some targeted harassment going on, and I don't like the feel of that. Okay. Now, that's where at this point you could probably say this all, well, Brian, just give it up. And most people would do exactly that. Let's see. Instead, what dumb Brian decided to do was build something a little bit more like that. And I've actually purchased the land. You give me just 1 second. I know this is going to come off terrible, but this is alive. So what the heck? Let's see. In motion, presentation. This is where I'm at right now. with my new design. Now, while this is coming up, understand this is a little bit newer technology. This is something that I sort of specialize in. Putting this stuff in 3D gives me a chance to talk about the fact that, I thought it was so good when I learned 3D. Uh, but this whole situation, as well as others in the actual field of construction, you have to be more than 3D. It's really about 4D. Time really comes into consideration with a lot of this stuff. And I think it definitely is in play in our case here because when that code was changed, and according to what I'm being told by multiple architects, it's a little bit unusual to change that code. Oh, you know what? I hope this doesn't mess up my live stream. If this messes up my live stream, what this is there's the piece of land that I've purchased. And what I need to do is I need to go up there and I need to start grading. And that's where I'm going to go after court is I'm going to go up there and start cutting this into the mountain so that I can bring these shipping containers up here. If I can't have anything else, if there's nothing you can do for me, the ability to be able to move those shipping containers after I've got this area prepped. You can see this is the side of a mountain. Okay. Now, second problem I have is the majority of the time, this is what it looks like. Okay. There's still 32 inches of snow in May right now, currently. The building season is extremely short. So my final question would be, if I'm not allowed to build the shipping container structure in Fort Mill, am I allowed to build the modular containers in my backyard and ship them to Montana? So at this point, the rest of what I was going to show is just going to be the presentation that I've already made. And what I'd really like is I'd like any input from anybody who's going to watch this. I'm hoping we're going to do a live stream tomorrow, in which case we can review this at Twin Motion. As cool as anything, is basically a video game, but it really taxes your computer. So let's see. I need to get to my Googly, then probably not that one. Not that one. That's him right there. All right. So we're what, 30 minutes? You can see this guy here. Oh, it looks like it's about an hour and 12 minutes. That's about an hour and a half. And what you're going to hear in this one here is our court case. And where I didn't want to interrupt because I know that doesn't go over well, some questions I had, some pointers that I had, some disappointing things. Keith really doesn't have a problem perjuring himself. Now I do, you know what? In order for you to be able to hear it, I need to stop that screen. I need to share this as that and say share, and then I can play this. So like I said, this is going to play for an hour. I'm going to go take a break and get in the hot tub. And hopefully tomorrow we can get together on a stream. I'm hoping that to be able to get on a stream with my family as well as some of my friends. And then I'm going to be redesigning this thing this week. Try to get some blueprints and some drawings together for the hearing, which is next week. If there's any way you could contribute to my dilemma, I would greatly appreciate any advice I can get. So here we go.
All right, folks, well, it starts out on mute, but if you would be so kind as to take it off mute, and we'll get started. All right, looks like we got one off mute. And then imagine the other person is working it off, getting it off mute. Here we go. If both of you just tell me your names, then I'll get you marked down as being here. We'll get you sworn in.
Officer Keith Bowes, York County Code Enforcement.
All right. And then, sir,
Brian Mitchell, 1515 Hensley Road.
great. Each of you raise your right hand and swear or affirm you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
I do.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. DeBose. Tell me about the case.
Good afternoon. Just want to say we received a call on March in 2023 concerning about 3 shipping containers on the property of 15 Hensley Road. After further investigation, it was determined from taking photos that there was 3 containers on the property, and the property was zoned RSF 30 in York County. And that would be in violation of having the containers, and it's not zoned. It's RSF 30, so you can't have ship containers in RSF 30. So we sent a notice of violation April the 19th. It was mailed out and to be in compliance by May the 5th of 2023. Nothing was done May 5th, but our zoning administrator with York County, Rachel Grothy, emailed Mr. Mitchell on how to explore options of possibly being able to keep a storage building on the property, container on the property. I think she requested Mr. Mitchell to have a timeline for projects, including anticipated completion times and dates, also photos of the inside of the containers, and if there are containers that are filled with building materials. And Mr. Mitchell did supply those photos as in conjunction with evidence that he turned in. Is the same photos that I turned in, showing the inside of the containers. It was proposed by our zoning administrator on June the 13th. There was a email that was sent out, and it said, "Thank you for sending the photos and contents of the shipping containers. My apologies for not having responded to you earlier. I have taken a close look at the contents of the container and determined that while it may contain some related to your active building permits, because Mr. Mitchell was building on a vacated property, a vacant house that he was rebuilding on that property of 1515, which is located directly across from his residence at 1516. And it says the majority of the storage appears to be personal items. She stated, I am in the opinion that all the items in the active building permits can be stored in the remaining spaces within container 3. Like I indicated, it appears to be the majority of the containers are filled with personal items, vehicle, coolers, shelving, extension cords, lawn equipment, car parts, propane, etc. I will give y'all the standard 15 days from today, that was June the 13th, to remove the 2 of the 3 containers. Please work with your code enforcement officer, Keith Bowes, on meeting the deadline. Thanks, Rachel. So even though he wasn't allowed to have any of the containers, the zoning administrator was trying to make an exception to have at least one of the containers, with the option to remove the 2 containers to allow 1. And at that time, the containers continued to be on the property, and none of them was removed from the property, which brought us to the conclusion to email that we had to send a final notice of violation, and we did so through certified mail, and this was done November the 15th, 2023. And it on the receipt, I got a tracking receipt there, said delivered to an individual at 2:14 p.m. November 15th, 2023, Fort Mill, South Carolina, 29715. And that contained the the compliance letter to be in compliance by November the 27th. In my notes on the compliance letter, and it is actually for more than just a shipping container, because there was some unregistered vehicles on the property. And I neglected to write Mr. Mitchell a citation on that because my concern at the time is trying to get the shipping containers removed from the property, and we'd work on the cars at a later date. But at this time, I wrote a notice of violation, not allowed to have shipping containers in the RSF district of York County. We'll need to remove 2 of the 3 shipping containers. As a courtesy, you are allowed to keep 1 shipping container per the zoning administrator. The shipping containers will need to be located behind the principal building. Allowed 1 unregistered vehicle on the property. If it's parked in the rear of the property, at least 25 feet from the rear, 10 feet from the side. And all unregistered vehicles need to be placed inside of a fully enclosed roof structure or removed from the property. Failure to do so will result in a citation. So this was the one that was delivered. And also there's a sticker on the bottom. Well, it's a copy of the sticker that shows in conjunction with the receipt from the parcel service for the certified letter. Also attached to that letter was a copy of our ordinance, 155-705. was talking about the shipping containers, and a line was drawn to the subpart A, which it shows that RSF 30 included in those conditions, and that the shipping containers would need to be removed from the property. Also attached was some emails that were sent by Rachel to Mr. Mitchell to remove those 2 off the property. And then we didn't get that taken care of. So what we had to do then, we used Whitesell Investigative Services to, we wrote a citation and got Whitesell to serve it for us at 1516 Kinsley Road, and they did so. And the receipt attached to that also, it states that the successful attempt on November the 30th, 2023 at 6:48 p.m. Kinsley Road, received by Brian T. Mitchell, age 47, ethnicity Caucasian, a male, weight 230 pounds, 5'10", hair bald, eyes brown, no glasses. Attempted service at this address provided. I made contact with Brian T. Mitchell, confirmed his identity, and accepted service without incident. And that's when the citation was issued. And that brings us to court today. Our intentions was never to write Mr. Mitchell a citation. Our intentions was to get the containers removed from the property. And I am willing to go forward in future proceeding if we can have a continuance to, if going forward, and that could be an option to have a continuance to remove those containers off the property, because that's the ultimate goal from the county. And the county rests this time.
I'm gonna ask you a couple questions just to try and clarify some information you testified to and to help me understand the documents that were submitted. So
Yes,
the
ma'am.
documents I've got is, sir, I've got long hair and I don't have a deep gravelly voice, but I'm a man.
I'm sorry, sir.
Right? Not many women have pretty curly hair like this, so I don't blame you. Just kidding. I'm talking to 2 bald guys. But I mean, seriously, this is something we're going to work our way through. So it's fine. I've been called a lot worse than ma'am. And I know when people say ma'am, and it's out of respect and being cordial, and it's not a big deal at all. All right. So I've got this notice from April 19th and then the May 5th compliance. So that's one of the documents I've got. I've got the notice dated November 9th, and then November 27th was the date of compliance. So there's another document I've got. I've got the United States Parcel Service tracking that confirms delivery, and it shows delivery of the 15th, and that is for the purposes of the November 9th letter. Is that right, sir?
That's correct.
And then I've got another letter that appears to be the same as November 9th, and sometimes things get printed out more than once, so it's not a big deal. If it's a duplicate, I'll just flip it over and use it as,
It's a du-
okay, and it looks like it might have that tracking number at the bottom, might be the purpose of that. Let's see, yeah, that's what it is. It's got the tracking number at the bottom. So I'm gonna take out one of them. If it just gets to be too much, I'll just use the other side for scrap paper.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got those lined up, and that's what came together. Then, you added 155.705 applicability. The subboard applies to all shipping containers which are allowed as a conditional accessory use in AGC, which is an ag, AGC, ag, rural, RUD, both rural. What is RI, LI, and ID? And it's okay if you don't know them at the top of my head. I mean, the main thing is that
I know. it.
RS F30 isn't in there, which I'm assuming RS is some sort of residential family housing.
That's correct. RI is it's rural industrial.
Okay, and then light industrial, and then what's ID?
ID is industrial.
Just straight up industrial. Okay, that makes sense. And so development standards in 706, location, all shipping containers must be located behind the principal building. Okay. Now we've got some emails. One for November 9th, and that's Rachel Groth. You mentioned her, the zoning administrator. And that's got some emails back November 7th to Mr. Mitchell, and also it appears Michelle Mitchell, which may be his wife. It could be somebody.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, and that's the request to, hey, remove these. And then we've got one from June, and I had written down June 13th. Let me just make a note. That's the email that was in response to him saying, hey, I'm using this stuff for construction supplies. What I'm going to do with those emails is I'm just going to make everything in April. Okay. And then this is 1180. So that's the same. Those are the last four. That tracking number, I believe that's the same one. 5, 4. Yep. So I'm going to put that with that. I appreciate y'all's patience as I work my way through it. And then this November 7th email. Hey, you can move these photos, acknowledging receipt of those. There's kind of a schematic that's put out. And is okay, proposed renovation. This one. And then the photographs that you included, tell me about those. Like when were those taken?
Those were taken the beginning of May.
Were
After
those ones that you sent or that he sent to me?
I sent those.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So I can see. Okay. So one of them I'm looking at, the best way to describe it is there's a van to the left, and then there looks like an older, probably a residence, then a shipping container. And then it looks like it's the same shipping container based on the rust patterns. And then on the other side of that, in the second picture, I can see what appears to be a new building, potentially a residence. Is that right, sir?
That's correct.
And then, okay, and I see same, that now I can see just a different view of the building. I can see one shipping container middle and then a van. And it looks like another vehicle and then either a Chevy truck or a Blazer or could be a Suburban, but got that front on it. Could be a Ford. A little hard to tell.
Still a Silverado.
Okay. Yeah. And then, okay, let's see, what's probably a Yukon and a couple of vehicles. And another vehicle in between some pretty nice big trees. It's not around like they used to be. I see a Forerunner and I'm gonna let you tell me all about it. I just kind of wanted to flip through and make sure that I didn't have any questions for him before I give you the opportunity to tell me all about it. Let's see why it's so processed. Now, Mr. DeBose, tell me, like, why did the county end up using service of process in order to, was that one of the letters you were serving or the actual citation?
Our actual citation. We
Okay,
use third party. We use them all the time. We use them in the county because we're working from 7 to 4 during the day. A lot of times we can't catch the people at home whenever they work during the day.
yeah,
Also, if they're out of town, we used the process server to write our we write citations and they deliver them for us. And it also a third party to swear to that it got sent to the right person at the right date also.
okay. I've got some things that I know Mr. Mitchell's gonna explain to me. And you mentioned both 1516 and 1515 Hensley Road. One of them has the new home and one of them has the older structure. Is that right, sir?
1516 is Mr. Mitchell's residence. And directly across the road from that is 1515, which is where their construction is being done at, and that's where the violation is at.
At 1515.
That's correct, 1515.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Yeah, well, it looked, it's hard when I'm looking at pictures like this, but I heard you say before something about across the road, and that makes sense because typically you've got odd on one side and even on the other side. Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions, but Mr. Mitchell, before you testified, did you have any questions you wanted to ask Mr. DeBose?
No, sounded pretty much like what I'm familiar with.
Okay, well, I don't want to not give you the opportunity to tell me about it, but I think you probably heard that his offer still stands, that the goal is to remove those. Tell me where you stand on that and we'll see what we can do to get there.
Well, that's why we needed to get you involved because I've explained to the code enforcement, I'm not sure if it was Keith or someone else with enforcement, that if you look at section 155.718 temporary use table, you have that ability or
Oh, yeah,
perhaps
yeah, I sure
pull that
will.
with you?
Give me just a second. We'll pull it up. Let's see. I tell you what, I'm gonna use a different computer than the one that's there. It'll just take me a second. We'll get you fixed up. I'll pull it right up. We'll be able to look at it together. But while I'm pulling it up, if you want to read it to me, go right ahead.
Well, it's a table, so it doesn't read like
It's a
paragraph.
table. Okay.
But what it says is for temporary use, construction-related office and storage other than subdivision sales and construction centers. It says zoning compliance required. Yes, if the use is not located on the same site as the associated construction, which that's not valid because we are on the same site as the construction. So then it says the maximum duration of use, and it says no maximum if the associated construction has an active building permit, which I do. And then it says permitted locations, all districts, if use structure is located on or adjacent to the associated construction site. And I pretty much think that reads as it does.
And would you please be so kind as to give me that number again? I do have the ordinances.
Or
pulled
it's,
up. It was
it's section 155.
155, yes, sir.
And then it's .718, and that would probably be on page 277 of your section 155.
Hmm. We're getting somewhere. Okay, temporary use table, temporary use table, temporary uses are allowed for the length of time and in the location specified in table 155.71-1, 718-1. Temporary uses, if the use complies with all applicable supplemental regulations and other provisions of this plat, of this part. Temporary, I'm gonna change, I wear two different pair of glasses in here. I'm gonna change to a different pair to read this a little bit better. There we go. Unlisted temporary uses. Okay. Construction related offices and storage other than subdivision sales. And so that's the one you want to draw my attention to, right, sir?
That's correct. That table, correct.
Got it. Use conditions, there's nothing under use conditions. Zoning compliance required, yes. If the use is not located on the same site, but it is located on the same site, like
Correct.
everybody agrees on that part, right? Maximum duration of use, no maximum if the associated construction has an active building permit. And I think maybe when I was flipping through those emails, like there is a building permit, like that's not an issue, right? I mean, everybody agrees on that part too. Must be removed within 30 days of issuance of a final CO. Permitted locations, all districts, if the use structure is located on or adjacent to the associated construction site. AGC, I think this is the same stuff. The use is not located. Okay. Well, Mr. DeBose, his position is that under 718-1 temporary uses, it's allowed. And so what's the county's position on that?
County's position on that as construction related offices? Is that offices? he's
Well,
saying?
yeah, it says construction related offices and storage.
That's right. And it says all districts if the use structure is located on and adjacent to the associated construction site. So is it use on the adjacent to the associated construction site or on this construction site?
Well,
On
on or adjacent. So like if you had two parking spaces,
That's right.
on or adjacent would be,
Yeah.
the middle space is on, and then the
Well,
adjacent would be the one next to it on each side.
Yeah, I don't think, and what the zoning administrators was going to allow one, even though she stated that technically he wasn't supposed to have any because in the ordinance that stated there wasn't allowed to have any on RSF 30 at all. That was the zoning administrator's recommendation in her email also to him to give him a lot of time. We were allowing one of the three on the property to try to work with Mr. Mitchell and giving him access to a storage container temporarily until he got a CO. And then, of course, it stated in that email it was not to be permanent, that it would have to be removed after construction. So there was leeway with the county allowing Mr. Mitchell one of the three storage containers. And we had a complaint. We're complaint based.
I know that I know this, but I know for Mr. Mitchell's,
yeah, I know
it's like people they're not driving around looking for it.
That's correct.
If a neighbor complains, then they're going to respond. So if Jed Clampett has got 15 cars out in front of his house, they're not going to write him any tickets unless Jed Clampett's neighbor calls and says, yeah, well, Jed, he's not going to get the cars. It looks terrible. I don't want him there. So anyway, yeah, that's interesting. I'll look at it again.
I was just saying, as far as reasonable, being allowing him to have one on the property, it could be the constitute from the zoning administrator to allow him to have one, but three would be excessive for that lot. And the recommendation for him to move those, we gave him ample time to.
Well, I don't doubt y'all have been reasonable. A lot of this stuff is never about the reasonableness of all the people involved.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, please go right ahead.
I know it's obviously zoned differently, but I don't know if you've driven up Tom Hall Street lately in the Walmart neighborhood center and noticed the 22 shipping containers they've put in their parking lot. See, the
I
way
did notice a bunch of
the way that schedule reads, it doesn't say a maximum of one in the schedule. When it's under for a construction storage, it says maximum duration. There is no maximum. Okay, and that's for the duration as well as for the number of shipping containers. You know, you got to understand, I've never had this much problem with code enforcement, and I've worked on probably about $30 million worth of buildings and structures in York County, ironically, because that's what I do. I work with architects and engineers. I've worked on 3 of the middle schools, 2 of the elementary schools, and on Nation Ford High School. I've worked on the Clover Park. I've worked on several jobs in this area. And then the extra interesting thing is shipping containers are no longer what they used to be, because we can drive right down to Indian Land and I could take you out for a cup of coffee and I could say, do you realize we just bought that out of a shipping container? All right. Shipping containers are now being used for structures and the like. So, number 2, we keep referring to the RSF 30, which I'm extremely disappointed. I don't exactly understand how I got in an RSF 30 zone, but I'd like Keith to explain when I would have been an RSF 30. And by that, I mean, in 2019, was I an RSF 30?
Your Honor, you want me to
Yeah,
respond?
I mean, yeah, we're
Okay,
we've got a
here's
few minutes. I mean, I've got another one coming up at
I'm
3.
not sure. I'm not sure of how long he's been RSF 30, but prior to 2023, he was RSF 30. And this
No, excuse.
before March of 2023, he was RSF 30. It could, and we had a rezoning. I believe
Correct.
it took effect. It didn't change the. It just changed the verbiage of RSF 30. It didn't change.
No, that's incorrect because I was RC2. I was in a residential conservation 2.
That's when I'm looking at the notes right here. RC2 changed to RSF 30, residential single family, which is exactly the same as RSF 30. RC2 and RSF 30 are exactly the same.
Right,
Let me ask a little bit different question.
Sure.
Mr. Mitchell, how much longer is the construction going to go on?
I stated that in the narrative that I'm planning on having it done by the spring, or by May is what I had put in the narrative that I provided to the code enforcement.
Almost to May. You know, I mean, unless I'm reading it wrong, I gotta say, I think Mr. Mitchell's right on his temporary issues. You know, that even if you look at the qualifier, which is the part before it, so
Yeah.
before we get to the table, you know, you've really got to read.
Yeah, I'm going by what the shipping container and subpart 412-155-705. It applies to all shipping containers in this section. So it includes RSF if it's in RSF 30. So the subpart applies to all shipping containers which are allowed as a conditional accessory use in the AGC, AGC1, RUD, RUD1, RI, LI, and ID. It doesn't have that for RSF 30. That is the reason why we had to send him that. Also, it constitutes a nuisance being on the property. The reason why we got the complaint from in the first place. The size of that lot with 3 shipping containers on it is very excessive, and that's the reason why we allowed him to keep one.
I know what y'all did, and I got one in 10 minutes, so I got to listen. Mr. Mitchell, what are you going to do once you finish the construction there with the 3 containers?
Well, I'll be honest with you. You remember when you were saying there appears to be pictures of one old house and then there appears to be pictures of one new house?
Yes, sir.
Would you believe those were both the same house?
Oh, really? So did you gut it and redid?
In other words, the house I'm living in used to look exactly like that old mill house across the street.
Wow.
Okay. I had 5 daughters. I needed a little bit more than that little tiny mill house. and I did those renovations. And see, that's what frustrates me the most is I've lived at this address for 33 years. Okay. Those two shipping containers, and I would definitely argue with Keith that those two shipping containers were over there before RSF 30 ever existed. They were over there when RC2 existed. And what frustrates me the most is the code enforcement agency has been weaponized against me. Okay. So 4 years ago, someone from code enforcement came out and told me I couldn't have 6 chickens on the land. While he was telling me that, those chickens were pinched between the blue container and the gray container, and he never mentioned the containers. So after I rectified the chickens and got rid of the chickens, then the new code came out, and guess what the new code says? You can have 6 chickens. So they actually probably knew the new code was coming out, but since the new code wasn't out, the old code didn't say you couldn't have them. It didn't say you could have them. It said neither way. So he interpreted that as though I couldn't have the chickens. So like I said, I removed the chickens, but nothing was said about the shipping containers because there was nothing in the old code about the shipping containers. What's in the code about the shipping containers didn't come in till 22 months ago. Okay. The blue shipping container and the gray shipping container have been there long before that code was ever even released. As a matter of fact, those two containers were long before the neighbors who built their new house were even there. I have satellite imagery that shows those shipping containers without the neighborhood, without the new house, and without any problems. Okay. And I think it's a shame that the code enforcement, the real job of code enforcement is to keep us safe. If you go back and look at the narrative, there's a reason we have code enforcement, and it's not so that one neighbor can strike out at another neighbor. And
I know you're pressed for time. I know you got a
Yeah,
case
I mean,
coming
they can wait a few minutes. I don't want to cut either one of you off from some of this.
asked for a continuance to try to remove the 2 shipping containers and allow him to have one until construction is complete. That's what the county would like to move forward with.
If I can,
Yeah, please.
if I can, I know you appreciated those nice big trees.
Yeah.
If you look at the photographs, what you'll see is I harvested 2 poplars and 2 oak trees, and that's what's in shipping container number 3. So this idea of combining everything into one container, that was when I said that's outside the scope of what code enforcement has the ability to do, because you've got to understand the one shipping container that is full of that wood that is drying out and is 75% dry. The bottom stack still needs about 3% more moisture reduction, and then I'm ready to have that wood harvested, and I'm ready to move that green shipping container. It was only there for me to dry that wood so that I could turn it into flooring to put it down in the house where I harvested.
Oh, wow. So you are going to plane it out and get it.
That's correct. And what frustrates me so much is no one's taking into consideration if I put my tools in that container with that high moisture content, all of my tools are going to rust.
Yeah, they get ruined. All right. Well, I mean, I do think, and what I wanted to say to both of you, and in particular for people that get these tickets, that part of this process, we all need the opportunity, and especially if something's been frustrating this relationship with the government that, you said you lived there 30 years, you sometimes guys just vent your spleen and say these things in a way and in a forum that I don't blame you for wanting to say them. So that's why I want to make sure you get it.
And I've repetitively tried to bring them up to code enforcement, and we weren't gaining any ground. And
it becomes even more important when you feel like you've brought it up and nobody's listening to you. Right. I mean, it becomes even more important for me to not cut you off. And that's why I said, even though I've got this thing in 3, we can spend a few more minutes, that we want this to be productive. And I know that, he's asked about continuing. I mean, I mean, we can continue it till June if we want to. If you
Yeah.
think that's gonna give everybody the time to finish up the construction, to let the wood dry out, you know, if the neighbors complain again, you can say, look, we've got a case pending in front of Judge Wood. He continued it.
And that's
I
what
mean,
the
in that
county-
way, it takes some pressure off them and
That would be awesome. I
Yeah.
would greatly appreciate it.
I would appreciate.
yeah, that we'll just do it. I mean, June, and I suppose that what we could do if we needed to, we can get back together in June. And if you're like, look, man, I got 2 out of there, got the wood floors, here's what's cooking. We'll work together. That these courts in particular are intended to help work this stuff out. It's not an ATM, it's not a money collector, it's not to knock people on the head. I live here, both of y'all live here.
Yes.
We're gonna work our way through this thing.
I agree. Judge, I know Mr. Mitchell has some opinions about what the county, but actually our intention is just to come in compliance with what the ordinance states. And as far as those chickens coming in, that's actually a whole new ordinance for the whole county that came up. Mr. Guffey, when he was on the council, he helped champion that to be able to have chickens, and it allowed me to have 6 chickens on my RC1, which I'm RC1, and like you're RC2 at that time.
How many eggs do you get out of them, Mr. Bose? Like
Out
weekly?
of my chickens, I get 5. I get 5 eggs a day.
Wow, pretty good. I mean,
That's what I
30
was getting. That was what I was getting before I had to remove them. And it was very unfortunate to
Yeah, I couldn't have
months
chickens.
later see that they and I'll be honest with you, if it was just the chickens, I understand, but it wasn't just the chickens. I stopped working on that structure in 2018 because code enforcement came by and put a halt on me and wouldn't allow. Excuse me?
I said that wasn't me, and I'm not aware of what you're
It
talking
was
about.
someone from your office. And if you go back, you can look up the ticket. The part that frustrates me so much is when the inspector came out in May and he looked at me for the initial inspection. He said, Mr. Mitchell, I don't understand. Why did you pull a building permit? You're not doing anything structural. You didn't need to pull a building permit. And guess what? That's exactly what I explained to the last code enforcement person. And he didn't want to hear anything. And he halted me for 4 years. Guess what? The house would have been done and the container would have been out of here had I not had to pull the building permit. So it's really frustrating when I've been held up by York County, but then I'm rushed by York County. Does that
Sir,
make
I'm not but you. I'm giving you till your construction's complete to be able to move it. I'm trying to work with you.
Well, I mean,
Thank
it's entirely possible for things besides the individuals involved to kind of carry over and make people feel like they've been fighting a fight, even if you weren't involved in it. I mean, and like I said, that's some of the value of getting to say these things. But I think we've come to a pretty good conclusion. It's going to work for everybody.
Can I ask one thing for our continuation? If
Yeah,
we could pick it
yeah.
up and be prepared, and that's in section 155.301, or I'm sorry, .1301, defined terms, and that in there it tells you that a shipping container is a 6-sided steel unit originally constructed as a general cargo container used for the transport of goods and materials, also referred to as an intermodal shipping container or a Connex container. So my question to you, and I'll be glad to hear the answer in June, is if I cut one of the walls off of that container, making it a 5-sided object, is it still a shipping container?
By definition.
Okay. And I appreciate you doing a continuance. I'll be honest, I really look forward to talking to you in June, and I would appreciate if you could schedule a little bit more time. I have 5 daughters.
Oh yeah.
Those cars you're talking about going after me next, I have 15 insured cars on my policy. Okay. The one that you called a Forerunner is a little tracker. I use that as a glorified lawnmower. I use it to pick up branches. I use it to move heavy equipment. I use it as though it's a wheelbarrow. I also have a Bobcat. You don't get a Bobcat registered. If I can only have one unregistered vehicle, is that my Bobcat? Is that my tractor? Is that my lawnmower?
I think the Bobcat and the tractors and lawnmowers, those are all, they don't fall under that. It's motor vehicles.
So if I'm using a motor vehicle that's no longer licensed to be on the road, but I drive it regularly, multiple times a month, I don't understand why I can't have that vehicle the same as you would have a four-wheeler.
Because the ordinance states you can only have one unregistered vehicle on your property. And if you do have it unregistered, you can have it. It has to be in a fully enclosed roof structure or removed from the property.
I apologize, but that feels very confrontational as a homeowner who's lived here for 32 years. That feels very confrontational.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to worry about the lawnmower or the Bobcat or any of that. They don't.
Believe me, I have to worry. The neighbors that built the new house next to this property have had that house for less than 1 year. The sheriffs have been called 3 times. Animal control has been called 4 times. And I would love for Keith to tell you how many times they've been called.
Where did they move from? It's okay if you don't know.
And I have no clue.
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Yeah. It's
And see, that's why I asked you to read the definition of a shipping container, because it's gotten to the point where I will be glad to go out there and hit that shipping container with the plasma cutter and cut both the walls off of it. And it will no longer be a shipping container, but it'll be a fence, because that's what it'll be. I'm going to use the sides of the shipping container to create a fence between their property and my property. That's why I wanted you to look into that definition for June.
Well, I hope things are peaceful between now and June. I'm sorry. There's nothing like having problems with neighbors. It's just the worst thing in the world. So hang in there. I do appreciate your
I
time.
appreciate your continuance, and I look forward to talking to you in June.
Y'all take good care. Thank you, Mr. DeBose. I appreciate your time, sir.
You know what date in June?
I don't yet, but I'll have one of the ladies figured out, and we'll email you, and we'll probably do it this way. It's a nice way to do things without people having to leave the comfort of their office, get out on the road, fight traffic, for you, you'd be spending an hour and a half, 2 hours driving back and forth here. It just doesn't make sense to do that when we can use technology.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Your Honor.
Appreciate it now. Bye-bye. Good afternoon. And that's why I went in to let everybody in, because they were waiting, and it's a little bit different. It's not in the criminal context. And so, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. DeBose, it does start on mute, but if y'all just take it off mute for a minute, I'll just kind of get a status check or update from the two of you. Wow, Ms. Leggett, kind of choose on that for a minute. It is on mute, Mr. Mitchell. All right, go ahead, DeBose. Any progress on this one?
The current position on the county is I went back and conducted an investigation. The metal shipping containers are still on the property. They haven't been removed from the property yet. Our position was to continue this case to give Mr. Mitchell some time to make his improvements to his house and use those storage containers during the time he had a permit. We had discussed the temporary use of allowing him to have those shipping containers as long as he had a permit on the property, and we prolonged it to this point. As of right now, the shipping containers are still on the property, and our county's position is to have them removed from the property. And at the present moment, the permit that was in question has expired. It expired I got an email from the permitting department stated that the last inspection that took place was October the 24th of 2023. And the permit has been expired since April 24th, 2024, the 6 months. And in the permit section that he received, there's a notice at the bottom that was highlighted in some documents that I sent, basically stating that if he doesn't it says here, the permit becomes null and void if work or construction authorization is not commenced within 6 months, or if the construction or work is suspended, abandoned for a period of 6 months, and any time after work has commenced. So that was the reason for the permit to expire, because there was not anything submitted or done since October of last year. So the allowance of the shipping containers on the property, that wouldn't apply now that there's no permit. And the county, I don't want to cite and I don't want to give any fines or anything to Mr. Mitchell. Our goal is to just to appease the complainant and the ordinance and have those shipping containers removed from the property. Which at the current moment, all 3 shipping containers are on the property. There's an aerial photo that shows a better understanding of where those shipping containers are. And that's pretty much where the county is at the present moment, as far as improvements go.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Mitchell. Tell me what's going on. I think we were here at the beginning of the year, and
The biggest thing that's going on is life. My mother-in-law had to have some surgery. I'm sure when you drove by Mr. DeBose, you saw the RV across there. We've had to deal with a little bit of life, and we've definitely fallen off track. But I'll be honest with you, this construction was never set out to be something that had to be forced and rushed. I'm working on a Caesar's Palace right now where everything's about deadline, deadline, deadline. To say that I haven't worked on that property in the last 6 months, that would be a gross misstatement. Okay. I have not had contracting crews out there, but I've diligently been working on the property. You should have noticed a new roof. You should have noticed the new doors. There's quite a lot of work that has been done. I know you took photos. Do you think the property really looks derelict? I know the shipping containers, but do you think the property looks derelict?
No, sir. I think your property looks beautiful. You got a nice property, nice building. That's not the concern of the county at this present moment. It's just to get those shipping containers removed from the property.
I understand that now. We talked about section 155.718.
Sure.
It doesn't say that if the permit is expired or revoked that you need to remove the shipping containers. It says the shipping containers must be removed within 30 days of issuance of final certificate of occupancy.
And
Okay.
if you look above that, it says no maximum if the associated construction has an active building permit. So you don't have an active building permit now. So you're not allowed to have shipping containers in the RSF 30 district of York County at any time.
And that's the unfortunate part, because it's very disappointing when I called for a final inspection to be told that no, they couldn't come out and inspect it because I didn't have an electrical contractor. But I never had an electrical contractor on this job. So it's obvious this is sticking in your craw, and I understand that. At the end of the last meeting, I asked everyone to look up section 155.1301. Did everyone have a chance to look that section up?
I haven't done anything since then related to this case, because the reason we stopped on 118 was because by the time we came back in June, you're going to have it moved. Okay. Some years I have 20,000 cases in 1 year. So no, I'm not sitting around working on your case. When I expect you to move something, you tell me you're going to move.
I said that I would move it as soon as I was completed with the construction. The reason I asked you to look at that section is the definition of a shipping container. And part of the reason that this is so disappointing to me is I've always intended on constructing out of those shipping containers. That has always been my intention. I have drawings dated up from 6 years ago. I wanted this done a long time ago, many years ago. It cost me money to pay taxes on that property. But I'm not going to make this one of the hot jobs that I work on. This was my daughter's senior year. I will tell you, I had to spend more time visiting colleges and dealing with my mother-in-law's situation. And I didn't, the only reason you can call in a final or call in an inspection is if the rough-in is done. All right. When the inspector came out, I didn't even get the chance to mention to you last time that when the inspector came out, he said, I don't understand, Mr. Mitchell, why you're pulling a building permit on this. You should be able to do all of this work without a permit. So I agree that I'm off schedule. And if that is a problem, I get it. I
I
understand.
mean, tell me what your schedule is.
Well, I'll be
reasonable
honest
person.
with you. I don't know if you've been outside this afternoon. My honest schedule is not to work on this thing till at least September. This is South Carolina. This is not a good time for an old man to be working on the construction. I would definitely hope to have this completed before the end of the year. But the reason I wanted to look at that definition, and I couldn't seem to find this in your manual that's on the internet, but section 155-1804.5, which is shipping container structures for York County. I'm intending on building with those shipping containers.
Let me go back to these other folks. So
Okay.
some people out of here and get some things done. That, it's always a lot of spinning wheels. Nobody ever wants to accept any responsibility for anything. It's always excuses and excuses and excuses. I've been doing this for 19 years. It's just an excuse factory. It's all I hear all day long is excuses. But that's what courts are for. The people that take care of their things don't end up in court. So. All right. Tell me which one you want me to look at, Mr. Mitchell. We'll do it right now.
I wanted you to look at 155-718.
55718.
And I apologize. I was extremely flustered. I'm sort of juggling another telemeeting at the exact same time that I'm.
Yeah, you're good, man. We're all human, and we all get frustrated by things, and it's fine. I'm human too.
And perhaps we can save a lot of time. We didn't have the conversation last time. My intention all along has always been to build with those shipping containers. It's been a dream of mine. If you can see over my shoulder, I have drawings dating back 6 years that were uploaded to the internet. This isn't something I just thought about yesterday.
So when you say build with them, you mean like how I've kind of maybe seen online before where people use shipping containers as part of their homes? So like in Old Fort up in the mountains, there's a bunch of them on the river that it's probably more of a creek.
In my case, just imagine I had 5 daughters and 4 of them have gotten through college. And none of them want to come back and visit to their old bedroom. So what I'm planning on doing is giving them an efficiency where it's a bedroom and a bathroom, almost like an apartment, so that they will come back and visit me once or twice a year. That's my intention, number one. Number two, the center part of this is supposed to be a large congregation hall. Because if I have 5 daughters to pay for 5 wedding venues, if I can even get 3 of them to utilize this as their wedding venue, the facility would almost pay for itself. I understand this is all crazy. That's why the video is titled, that's up on the internet, I think my dad's a wingnut, because at that time I was looking into using a 747 wing as the roof across these shipping containers. Understand, I've worked in construction for 30 years. I'm working, as I said, on a Caesar's Palace, which I was supposed to be completed with in January. They promised me, and I've still been having to take care of put out forest fires. I am absolutely way behind where I should be. If there's any way you could give me an additional 6 months, because as I said, I don't plan on doing a whole lot. I get heat stroke by almost going out.
Well, yeah, I know how hot it is. Nobody wants to see you get out there and get hurt or have a heat stroke or have a stroke for that matter. I mean, I'm with you. I don't want to.
And the only thing that's out of my hands is I can't get that done within 6 months. I'm counting on the zoning office letting me extend the building permit that has expired. And I know that there's cost fees. I'm willing to pay the cost. I'm willing to do all that stuff. I apologize it didn't get done in the 6 months that I thought it was going to get done. I do want to get it done, but I also want everyone to understand that I really do plan on building with those shipping containers. And I'm not trying to bamboozle someone because I told you I would relocate the shipping containers, because my intention is to relocate them on the site, to stack them up and put some open web bar joists across and create this house, this building that I've had as a dream for multiple years. I apologize that it's been a thorn in someone's side. It was never intended to be that way. The ironic part is those shipping containers were on the land before the neighbors built their house. So it's not like I moved the shipping containers in after they had already been established neighbors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I remember, you said, look, I've been here and it hasn't been a problem, and new neighbors built a house and they've been complaining. I'm sure Mr. Bose is probably tired of hearing from them too. And that's where the pressure comes from, that as you drive around the county and there may be things you see and you go, why are they letting that guy get away with fill in the blank? If nobody complains, they're not looking for it. It's all complaint driven. In the same way that if there's a stop sign in the neighborhood, everybody runs, and next thing you know, they're out there watching that stop sign. Somebody raised Cain to get that. That's just the way it is.
And I understand that. The unfortunate thing is that's been happening over and over again. And the part that bothers me the most is it's only 3 doors down. There's a shipping container right next to a house, and has been all along. And I understand that. I don't want to complain against my neighbors. I've lived here for 34 years. Okay. Understand that even if I get rid of the shipping containers, that's not going to stop the complaints, because the complaints keep coming. And it's a shame that we facilitate that kind of, I understand if there was something I could do to make it better for someone, I would be glad to do it. The ironic part is, if you really read the code, it says that they need to be screened, and the shipping container has now been screened with a fence and planting that the neighbors put in to screen it. So I understand it's not the most desirable. If I could possibly get a 6-month extension and a little bit of understanding, like I said,
tell me, Mr. Bose, about what does he have to do on the building permit to get kind of things moving again?
Yeah. Well, as far as the building permit, he'd have to be in compliance with all York County ordinances.
So that's the stick.
And that's this thing right now. He's under violation. So our position is we want the Mr. Mitchell to have anything that the ordinance will allow him. If he wants to stack 400 of those metal shipping containers on top of each other and make it a beautiful palace for him and his family, I'm in no way meaning, for him not to have anything that he can have, as long as the ordinance allows for it to happen. And at the present moment, the shipping containers are on his property that's RSF 30. And he may have had those shipping containers the last 20 years there. But during that last 20 years, if he had them there, the shipping containers was in violation the whole time during that present moment, because it was not zoned to have them.
Yeah. What about a pre-existing use? If he was already using it that and the ordinance changed, typically the law allows people to continue to use it. That's why sometimes you think you find things that can be out of character for a neighborhood. For example, and it's closed now, but for years off Dam Road was, Miller's, and there's just damn automobiles as far as you can see back there. They'd never let somebody put it in now, but he had it before all the zoning, and it wasn't much anybody could do about it. So if it was already there, how does that play into it?
The thing is, I'm not exactly sure when it was there, and the ordinance was written in 1986. And so, it's been in place for a long time.
Yeah.
Here, the thing is,
excuse me. Can I speak for a second?
Hold on a sec, Mr. Mitchell, and let him finish. I'll come back to you, I promise.
Yes, as far as the permits go on the shipping containers, I want Mr. Mitchell to get, if he can get permits for building and he wants to use those shipping containers um, as materials, we have a building official and the permitting department that he can go through that to be able to either be confirmed or denied whether he can use those shipping containers. At the present moment, he wouldn't be able to allow to have those items on the property at all during the process. And as of right now, our position is he would need to continue to remove those shipping containers, apply for a permit because he's under violation now, so he can't get a permit until he's not in violation. I'm willing to give Mr. Mitchell some more time and not cite him today, charge him today on the fines and the fees right now, and give him some more time to remove these shipping containers off the property. But it's a reasonable amount of time. We give, I think it's been since last year, and here it's almost July. So I'm willing to give another 30 days or at the court's time of choosing to Mr. Mitchell to remove those off the property. Is zone RSF 30, and RSF 30 are not permitted to have shipping containers on the property.
Can I go?
That's the county's position.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
You can.
When was
go ahead.
RSF 30 instated?
RSF 30 was approximately 2 years ago. They just changed the.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well,
but they
was it-
never. Let me finish.
Okay.
You asked me a question. I got to answer it.
I just asked for how long ago it was
Yeah.
instated.
The RSF 30 name was changed. The ordinance didn't change. The ordinance is the same. That just the name changed.
What did it change from?
It was RC 2.
Two. Correct.
Yeah, RC 2.
And what did that stand for? What does the RC stand for?
Right now, my main concern.
It stood for
residential.
residential conservation.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
residential.
So
It's not-
it was intended to conserve the neighborhood as it was in place. I mean, do you understand? For 15 years, they had 2 horses and a couple pigs and a lot of chickens over there. While it wasn't my property, that was the nature of the neighborhood. Now, I understand that that's not how the code is written. The code is written to improve the properties, and the code is written so that we don't degrade the adjoining property values. But what I'm saying is it was zoned as residential conservation. Now, what bothers me is you guys came out and gave me a hard time about the chickens. And while giving me a hard time about the chickens, you had your hand on that shipping container because that's where the chicken pen was. No one said anything about the shipping container from your office 4 years ago when you were giving me that hard time about the chickens. I had to get rid of the chickens. That was the bottom line. I had to get rid of the chickens. And then 2 years later, you went to RSF 30. And what's the adjustment with RSF 30? You can now have chickens, right?
Yeah, they actually
That
included the
seems a little
chickens.
bit unfair. It seems like when it cuts the good way, you're comfortable with it, but when it cuts the bad way, then that's no good. Like I
Yes,
said,
sir.
go ahead.
Speaking hypotheticals, if you are driving down your highway, your roadway that you live on, Hensley Road, and the speed limit is 45 through there or 35.
35, 35.
And they
Oh,
change it.
wait.
They change it this week,
Okay.
hypothetically,
30, sorry.
and it's now 20 miles an hour, and you continue to drive 35 miles an hour because that's what it's always been. Doesn't mean you're not going to be stopped by and getting a citation from an officer if you speed.
You know, I'm so thrilled that you brought it up, because if you look in your zone, your code, it's the first thing that you guys talk about. Is the reason that you're enforcing a code is to try to control that traffic. And if you have any idea of the shortcut that's been made of this road, and the fact that no one even goes 50 miles an hour in this 35 zone, and it's a total bone of contention where I'm sitting here saying, you know, there was a reason code enforcement was set up. And it's unfortunate that all it turns into is more of a weapon. And I understand how much I anger you. And I wish that I didn't. I wish that we could get along. And I wish you could see that I'm really not trying to take advantage of you. I've had this dream for a long time. This dream may not happen. So understand, I've already bought property, purchased it, paid in full, property in Montana, that if I cannot use those shipping containers here, then I won't use those shipping containers here. But that will break my heart, because I really did have a vision while paying taxes for the last 15 years on that property across the street, while I wasn't renting it, while I wasn't getting any financial gain from it. But I will tell you, I love that property, and it breaks my heart that I'm having such terrible time with that property.
Well, we don't want you to get rid of it. So here's what we're gonna do. I've got a 3 o'clock hearing that now I gotta get on there and apologize. I always tell the ladies here.
I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, I don't want you to apologize. But you know, they're waiting and it's an eviction and somebody owes them 10 grand and that's a lot of money. And maybe it's 11 grand. So I'm going to continue it twice. We're going to check back in as the weather gets cooler in the end of September to see that something's changed. And then we'll check back in December and then we're going to be done with it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I
Maybe
really
if you can't get
appreciate
done
it.
with it, then we're done with this. Okay.
Fair deal. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you.
Well, I'm sorry about your mother-in-law. Tell me what's cooking with her.
She had to have some back surgery and it was recovery time, and she's now up there in age and she's using that as a place to stay. Obviously, we want to move her into the house, and we want to move into that house across the street. Trust me, my wife is sitting behind me. No one wants this house done more than her. I apologize that I'm behind on schedule. I appreciate what you said. And
Biggest,
And just to reiterate, I mean, I'm not trying to stir up. I know you're going through a lot, and I know your family's going through a lot. But if you read the ordinance, Mr. Mitchell, you're not allowed to live in a camper in York County without a temporary dwelling permit, and that wouldn't constitute a temporary dwelling permit unless.
can I ask you to do one thing? Just one thing.
Yes,
Okay.
sure. I'm just telling you what the ordinance states, Mr. Mitchell.
I understand. I just want you to find it in your heart for one thing, because you see, you're not going to hurt me. You're going to hurt her, because she's having a hard time already. And this allows her to be across from her daughter. Just understand, this is Mike Doty's mother. Do you remember Mike Doty, the sheriff that was shot 4 years ago?
Yes, I do.
This is her mother, his mother. Okay, so if you have any compassion at all, let's see if we can just let me get this thing done. And then if I can't, if you guys don't want me to build with the shipping containers, like I said, I have a place that I can get them to. They're not exactly easy to relocate. I have to hire a heavy crane to lift those onto flatbeds. Okay, I can't put them on a load all because of the contents in them. I really appreciate your honor giving me this a little extra time. I'm really hoping that maybe you can speak to the rest of the office and we can get that permit reinstated so I can get that inspection. I've tried to do the work that he requested. I put in the collar ties. I've put on the roof. I have been making progress, not quickly enough, and I apologize for that. So if you give me a little bit of cool weather and we check in at the end of September, I am more than comfortable with that.
Yeah, but my position is that the county is you're not going to be able to obtain a permit with you being under violation, and that's the problem we got.
and there's no way for somebody to get a permit for the stuff that's there now, even though it hadn't been moved there.
Mr. Mitchell had the opportunity to reinstate that permit, and they let it expire.
Tell me
And
what you mean by that, just to make sure I understand that part of it. I know you've got expertise in it that it would take me a long time to gather. So help me out.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Keith. Is as far as saying let it expire, how does a person that's got one keep it from expiring? Is there always a set date? Like on
No, you have to call for an inspection within every 6 months. Okay. And I called for that inspection, and I called for that inspection 3 weeks later than I should have. And I realized that, as I said, I had those personal things
Mr.
going
Mitchell,
on.
I
Go
believe I believe that you're telling the truth. There's nothing me to believe that you're not telling the truth. but I based on my stuff on facts, and I have to have that proof or have evidence, and I don't have that in my system that you called and asked for an inspection within a 6-month period, and I would not dare say that you didn't do it, but I don't have the evidence to show that you did. And
I have an email response from the code office saying that they could not do an inspection, which if you look really hard, they're not really supposed to say that. And the reason they said that they could
I'm
not,
not in the permitting department, Mr. Mitchell. I'm just letting you know I'm the code
I,
enforcement.
I spoke with the permitting department, and I'm telling you, I have an email log of the
Okay.
permitting
Did
department.
you provide that today for us today? That email for
No, I did not.
evidence?
Listen,
Yeah, but you
listen,
can forward it. If you want to forward it to the court, we'll forward it to Mr. Buzz. You can send it that
Yeah.
mail filings. You can drop it off. You can send it in mail.
Because
Again,
I don't have that.
44 minutes ago, people were expecting to talk to me about a case that they've been waiting a month.
thank you so much.
You know, there's no reason us arguing anymore about it.
Sure.
It's not going to change anything.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Just
I
give you the
appreciate you.
opportunity, and I do appreciate both of y'all being kind and polite and patient, and being patient with me too. That I'm human, and I get frustrated by things just like everybody else, and I've got problems just like everybody else. And
I
we've
hope you
all got
have
a
a better
job to
day.
do, and we'll see if we can keep on plugging along, and that's all we're going to be able to do.
See you
Okay,
in September.
Thank you again.
y'all take care. Thank you.
So was there a good reason for the 100, other than just keeping the barn?
Yeah. I think it was.
Yeah, and to make it easier, it was just, well, let's make everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's odd that, it was 100 in the front, because you would think that if you've got ag structures, you're not concerned necessarily about impacting the road, but your neighbor that might not have that.
But that, right there, whenever you said that, like, there's places now, some of the places, no fault of anybody, because the roads have been changed. And I'm talking about, there's some places I'd be scared, I'd see them not in the house, because I think the roads have been cut up now, and they're right up there. But then there's other places where, they literally live on the side of the road. And like, I think when we got married and we put our trailer in, you had to be like 25 feet off of the property line. But I've seen some places, I think at one time, only 10 foot was required.
That'll be the side.
All right, folks, well, it starts out on mute, but if you would be so kind as to take it off mute, and we'll get started.
So it appears my Windows update, you know how Windows is just like everybody else, annoying as can be. It updated and chopped off the last little part of the video. But I'll be honest with you, from what I could tell right there, I'm going to have to crank up the volume anyway. Sort of why I'm doing this. But I can at least show you what I was looking at. If you give me 1 second. York County Council Planning. Let's see what that gives us. And there you go. Let's see. If we stop that screen and we share the other screen. We pull this over. As I mentioned before, if we go to York, let's see, and then come down to York and go to live, what you'd find is I tried to advise them on April 2nd when I had this change of venue, and I'm now down in a different court, which like I said, was, it was more than just a little bit hostile. I tried to get them to look at this timestamp. in this video. Let's see. Yep. And what this ends up this was in March. This was 3 days before the hearing. All I wanted the judge and Mr. DuBose to do was review this before we got deeper into this nonsense that we're now into, and that we're going to have a jury trial on. But they were discussing the shipping containers. And they have about a 20-minute discussion, which, quite frankly, you don't need to go into. It's the architect. It will be up there. I will put this on the tail end after I get all of my comments in. But the interesting part of it was, and this was just like a little bit too much. It's on May 6th. So we're talking about what, less than a week ago. You're going to see that look what they did. They amended the code so that now, and the ironic part, the reason I have to chuckle a little bit is you'll see the constraint that they put on this was something about 1.5 acres right there. My land is 1.6 acres. So according to this, I can now have two shipping containers on my property, even though Mr. DuBose felt that was excessive. The commission has actually amended, and I would imagine this is probably going to be issued in June. I ask you again, why are we here? I appreciate everyone's time. Any input, any comments you can give me would be greatly appreciated. Hopefully I can refine this, because next Tuesday, not this Tuesday, I will meet with the lawyer, and I'm hoping to forward at least this rough draft to the lawyer. But next Tuesday is the actual meeting or the hearing, my jury hearing, where I may be going to jail for 30 days, which is really sad. So I appreciate you taking the time to look at this. And I look forward to streaming with you guys this week.